Today is going to be a research paper kind of day. Why? We're considering the source. Well, the light source. I guess that's a different type of source. Anywho, I'm Unkempt Snugglepepper, and we're doing another Reddit critique. So, this lady is super cool and badass, and I have no idea what she's doing, but she looks very interesting. And she has a big red light source coming in from this direction, and that seems to be the only light source. And if that is true, then none of this white would exist as white. And I had to look this up. So when we see color, what we are seeing is the sun rays bouncing down onto an object and then bouncing up into our eyes. So when we see white, we're seeing the absence of all color. So if we have a red light and that's our only light source, then things like her pearls and her earring aren't going to necessarily be anywhere near white. And they certainly aren't going to be that bright. And the little highlights you have for her dress would also vanish. They would be absorbed into the red, as well as the netting that's coming down from her hat. Now, the whites of the eyes are only that bright in a more natural setting. Her eye should blend in under her hat. Another person suggested that since she has red light, juxtaposing that with a blue light. So I had to find a reference. Because I wasn't exactly sure how I would do this. I tried it a few times, but I couldn't quite nail down the cyan. Now, I'm not saying this is the only solution. I'm saying that adding a second light source is going to prevent all of this from turning to just darkness. I think adding a teal light source is going to look really cool. And here's how we would go about it. I'm going to select this side of her. There would be a little bit of rim light coming in from behind. This is going to all be selected. And then this portion. And then a little bit of this. And then we're going to go to Edit, Tonal Correction, Hue, Saturation, and Luminosity. Now, if you're not in Clip Studio, Paint, Krita, Photoshop, and I believe Procreate all have this option somewhere. And I'm going to move my hue to that cyan color. I'm going to drop my saturation down just a bit. And I'm going to drop my luminosity down, making it darker. Once I have that done, I will deselect it, and I'm going to go in with a brush and start cleaning things up. This shadow right in here is going to also turn kind of to black because it's getting neither the green light source coming from this direction or the red light source coming from the other direction. So where the two parts of the fur of her dress meet. We're going to bring in some more shadows because we can see in this reference, and I found this pretty common across the board in similar references, that because we have a colored light source, in this case red and cyan, that our shadows are going to be much deeper. We're eliminating those really bright light areas. And so it kind of moves the levels of the overall piece around. So I'd move that into more darkness. Now, with her, I'm assuming the red light is coming from her side and slightly behind her. So This will get that dark effect. This will get some of that red. This poof behind her will get the red and it'll transition into the turquoise. And just like with the red light, the pearls, they can read as white, but they aren't going to be white. They're pretty reflective, so they're going to hit that really bright red and that really bright turquoise. Similar with her earring. I do think it's interesting that you used noise a lot in this piece. Noise is what happens when you have a low ISO or light setting in a camera. And so it becomes that sort of texture similar to the noise that you find like white noise when you're watching TV and there's not a channel on. And as we can see, the lips get much darker. We're not going to be able to see the red of her lips either way. So if the focus of this piece was her face, then being backlit by a red source would not have been the best choice. As we can see in this example, her face is turned towards just enough that we're getting both. But in your piece, I would say we're only getting one. And that the brim of her hat is going to pick up that turquoise rather than the red. I'm thinking of the red light source coming in from behind her over her shoulder, and the blue source is coming in kind of directly from a side. There we are. I'm going to put a bit more shine on the lips from that blue source. And there's going to be a little bit of shine in the eye. Now, I think it's cool. I think it's going to defy the rules of lighting that her eye shows at all. Unless you have a pretty bright blue source kind of coming upwards at her. So that's how I would redo it. And then since this red, you have it outlining her figure down here, I would have it coming up just a little bit here. And then smudge that into the turquoise. Yeah. So if you don't go with the blue light, then her face would be almost completely in shadow. Now, there was another reference I saw where she has red light coming from one side and a second non-colorful light source. So she would have, the only way that we would get this is if she has another light source coming in that's going to not shade part of her red, which would happen if we, so all of this, similar to our last selection, would be lit by a normal light source. So the saturation would go down. The hue would... The hue, at least for her skin tone, would go more towards a warm brown in between red and orange. I don't know if you intend for her dress to also be kind of like that Carmen Sandiego red. That would depend on your preference. But if she has a normal light source on her, this portion of her would go towards that color. And her saturation would come down a bit, and the luminosity would come down. So that would be more apt if she is not, if she's getting a second light source that is not colorful. I think it's really interesting, a really interesting piece and design. So that's my big suggestion today on that one, is by adding that turquoise light, giving it like very moody lighting. If your goal is to make a moody piece with lots of mystery, I would go that route. If your point is to flesh out a specific character, I would consider some compositional changes, such as, do you really want only a red light? I hope this was helpful. If it was, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and down in the doobly-doo, I have Buy Me a Coffee and links to all of my pages, including my webcomic. Have a good one.